What if the person you least expect holds the key to your true self? What happens when a simple smile forces you to confront feelings you've denied for years? How do you rebuild your life when love challenges every belief you held about who you are? The first day Kai walked into the marketing firm on Michigan Avenue in Chicago was ordinary enough on paper. Sunlight poured through the tall windows of the open-plan office, coffee machines hummed, and keyboards clicked like always. I, Leonardo Reyes, sat at my usual desk reviewing campaign metrics for a big Midwest client. 32 years old, steady paycheck, a decent apartment in Lincoln Park, and a life that felt scripted. I had dated women in college, kept things casual since, and told myself that was just how things were. No drama, no questions. Then the elevator dinged, and out stepped Kai Thompson, the new account strategist transferred from the Los Angeles office. Tall, athletic build, sandy blonde hair that caught the light, and those blue eyes that seemed to actually see people. Our boss, Elena, introduced him around the team. When he reached my desk, he extended a hand and said, "Kai, heard you're the guy who makes impossible deadlines look easy." His smile came next. Easy, warm, the kind that reaches the eyes and lingers a second longer than professional courtesy requires. Something inside my chest tightened like a wire pulled too far. I shook his hand, muttered something about welcome aboard, and sat back down. But the feeling didn't fade. All morning I caught myself glancing toward his desk across the aisle. He was already deep in conversation with the creative director, laughing at something, that same smile flashing again. By lunch I told myself it was nothing, just new guy energy. I grabbed my usual sandwich from the cafe downstairs and tried to focus on the afternoon pitch deck. That night in my apartment, I stared at the ceiling long after the city lights dimmed outside my window. The smile replayed in my head like a loop. I had never reacted to a man's smile before. Or had I? Memories flickered. College roommates, gym buddies, that one trip to New York where a stranger on the subway had caught my eye and I looked away too fast. I pushed the thoughts down, rolled over, and forced sleep. The next weeks blurred into routine. Kai and I were paired on the same campaign for a national coffee chain. Late nights at the office became normal. He brought coffee without asking how I took it, and somehow got it right. Black, 1 sugar. We talked strategy, client quirks, then drifted into real talk. He mentioned growing up in a small town outside Seattle, coming out at 19, and moving to LA because the West Coast felt safer. I listened, nodding, saying little about my own life. Every time he smiled at one of my dry jokes, that wire in my chest pulled tighter. One Friday, after the team cleared out, we stayed to finish the final slides. Rain tapped the windows. Kai leaned back in his chair, stretched, and said, "You know, Leo, you're the first person here who actually listens instead of just waiting for their turn to speak." His voice was quiet, sincere. I looked up and our eyes held. For 3 full seconds, neither of us moved. Then I laughed it off, closed my laptop, and headed for the door with a mumbled "See you Monday." On the train home, the city lights streaked past, and I finally admitted it to myself. That smile had cracked something open I had spent years sealing shut. My heart was no longer listening to the old rules, and I had no idea what to do about it. Monday brought more rain and more time with Kai. The client loved our revisions, so Elena gave us the green light to expand the campaign. We spent the week in the conference room, whiteboards covered in sticky notes, takeout Thai boxes scattered across the table. Kai rolled up his sleeves, revealing a small tattoo on his forearm, a simple compass. For when I needed direction, he explained with that smile again. I asked what he meant, and he told me about the years he spent pretending to be someone else for his conservative family back in Washington. "Took me too long to realize the map was inside me all along," he said. I shared pieces of my own story then. Raised in a quiet Texas suburb by parents who still sent me church bulletins every Sunday. The pressure to be the good son, who would marry a nice girl and carry on the family name. I didn't say the word gay. I didn't have to. Kai just nodded like he already understood. That Thursday we grabbed drinks after work at a quiet bar near the river. No one from the office was there. The conversation turned personal fast. He asked if I had ever been in love. I hesitated, then admitted the longest relationship I'd had lasted 8 months with a woman named Rachel, and it ended because something felt missing. He didn't push. Instead, he told me about his first real heartbreak in LA and how it taught him that hiding pain only made it louder. Walking back to the train station under streetlights, our shoulders brushed once. I felt the contact like electricity. At the platform, he turned to me and said, "Whatever you're figuring out, Leo, you don't have to do it alone." That smile again. I boarded my train with my pulse racing and spent the entire ride home replaying every word, every glance. The weekend was worse. I drove out to the suburbs to visit my sister Sophia and her husband. Their 2 kids ran around the backyard while we grilled burgers. Sophia asked when I was going to bring someone home. I laughed it off, but inside the question burned. That night back in Chicago, I sat on my balcony with a beer and stared at the skyline. Kai's face kept appearing. I opened my laptop, typed "Am I gay?" into an incognito search, then closed it immediately. Fear and excitement tangled together so tightly I couldn't breathe. Monday morning, Kai was already at his desk with 2 coffees waiting. "Figured you might need this after the weekend," he said. The smile was softer this time, like he knew I was wrestling with something big. We dove back into work, but the air between us had changed. Every joke landed deeper. Every shared look lasted longer. I started counting the hours until we were alone again, and that terrified me more than anything. By the end of the week, I realized the smile wasn't just a smile anymore. It was the first honest thing that had ever looked back at me. And I was falling. Fast, helpless, and completely out of control. The project hit a snag in early October. The client wanted last-minute changes, and we pulled an all-nighter. Around 2 a.m., the office was silent except for the hum of computers. Kai stood and walked to the window, stretching. "Sometimes I wonder if all this hustle is just another way to avoid real life," he said. I joined him. City lights glittered below. He turned to me and for the first time asked directly, "You ever feel like you're living someone else's story, Leo?" I swallowed hard and told him about the family pressure back in Texas, the way my dad still introduced me as my son, the big city executive, like that made everything okay. Kai listened without interrupting. Then he shared that his parents still hadn't fully accepted him and that every holiday call felt like walking a tightrope. We ended up sitting on the floor with our backs against the glass, trading stories until sunrise. When he finally stood to leave, he rested a hand on my shoulder, just for a second, and said, "You're braver than you think." That touch stayed with me for days. Work continued, but now we texted after hours. Nothing flirty, just real talk. He sent a photo of the Chicago River at dawn with the caption, "Reminds me of you. Beautiful and a little turbulent." I stared at it for 10 minutes before replying with a simple same. Then came the weekend trip to Milwaukee for a client event. The firm booked us adjacent rooms at a lakeside hotel. After the dinner presentations, we walked along the pier. Wind whipped off the water. Kai stopped and said, "I like spending time with you, Leo. More than I probably should." The words hung between us. I wanted to say it back, to tell him the smile that started everything had become the only thing I looked forward to. Instead, I mumbled something about the cold, and we went back inside. That night, I lay awake listening to the waves and the sound of him moving in the next room. I realized I was no longer just questioning. I was certain. I was falling in love with a man, and the thought both thrilled and terrified me. Back in Chicago, the internal storm grew. I started avoiding calls from my parents. My sister noticed something was off during our weekly video chat and asked if I was seeing anyone. I lied and said no. The guilt mixed with the excitement until I felt split in two. Kai sensed the distance at work and pulled me aside one afternoon. "Whatever's going on, you can talk to me. No pressure." His eyes were kind, patient. That smile, still the same one, now felt like home. I almost told him everything right there in the copy room. But fear won. I nodded, thanked him, and walked away. The crack in my facade was widening, and I knew soon it would shatter completely. November brought the holidays and the first real test. The firm threw a Thanksgiving potluck. Kai brought his famous cornbread, and everyone loved it. My parents flew up from Texas for a surprise visit, staying at my apartment. They met Kai at the office party when he stopped by my desk to drop off a file. Dad shook his hand politely, but I saw the quick once-over. Mom smiled warmly, yet later that night at dinner she asked, "He seems like a nice young man. You two spend a lot of time together?" The question landed like a stone in my stomach. I changed the subject, but the tension stayed. Dad wanted to know why I wasn't dating anyone. I gave the usual excuses, busy at work, focusing on career. Inside I was screaming the truth I still couldn't say out loud. Kai noticed my mood the next day. We grabbed lunch at a quiet diner near the lake. Over burgers, he asked gently, "Family visit not going well?" I told him pieces, the expectations, the religion, the fear of disappointing them. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand for the first time in public. "You don't owe them a version of you that isn't real, Leo." His touch was warm and steady. I didn't pull away. That evening, my parents left for the airport. Mom hugged me tight and whispered, "Whatever makes you happy, Mijo. Just be honest with us when you're ready." Her words cracked the last wall. I sat on the couch after they were gone and cried for the first time in years. Kai texted me that night, "If you need company, I'm here." I invited him over. We didn't talk much at first. He just sat beside me on the couch, shoulder to shoulder, while a football game played on low volume. Eventually, I told him everything. The smile that started it all, the months of confusion, the terror of what it meant for my family and my future. He listened, then said quietly, "I've been falling for you since day one, Leo. But I waited because I knew you needed to arrive at your own truth." We didn't kiss that night. We didn't need to. The understanding between us felt bigger than any physical step. For the first time, I slept without the weight of secrets pressing on my chest. But the world outside wasn't done testing us. A week later, an old college friend from Texas posted on social media about traditional values and tagged me in the comments. The message was subtle but clear. Kai saw it too. He didn't say anything at first, just brought me coffee the next morning and said, "We face what comes together." The understanding felt solid until the week before Christmas when my sister called in tears. Someone from church back home had seen Kai and me having lunch and started rumors. Dad was asking questions. The crack had become a fracture, and the fallout was about to reach us both. Christmas in Chicago was cold and bright. Kai invited me to spend the holiday with him and a few close friends instead of flying home. I accepted. We decorated his small apartment in Wicker Park with simple lights and a tiny tree. On Christmas Eve, we cooked together, laughing over burned cookies and spilled wine. Later, sitting by the tree with soft music playing, he took my hand and said, "I love you, Leonardo. Not the version you show the world, the real one." I said it back for the first time. The words felt like truth finally spoken aloud. We kissed then, slow and careful, like both of us were afraid the moment might break. It didn't. It felt like coming home. But the next morning, my phone blew up. My father had seen a photo one of Kai's friends posted. Nothing explicit, just the two of us smiling by the tree. The text from Dad was short. "Call me. We need to talk." The conversation was painful. He asked if I was confused. Mom cried in the background. I told them the truth. I was in love with Kai, and it wasn't confusion. The line went quiet for a long minute. Dad finally said, "We raised you better than this," and hung up. Kai held me while I shook. He didn't offer empty promises, just stayed present. "They might need time," he said. "Some people take longer to rewrite their map." Work after the holidays felt heavier. A few colleagues whispered. One account manager I had considered a friend stopped inviting me to after-work drinks. Kai faced it with quiet strength, reminding me every day that our story was ours to write. We took a long weekend trip to Door County, Wisconsin, just the two of us. Snow covered the pines. We walked frozen beaches and talked about the future. Maybe moving to a bigger place together, maybe one day visiting my family when they were ready. On the last night there, sitting by the fireplace, Kai said, "Whatever happens with your family, I'm not going anywhere. You're worth every hard conversation." I believed him. The love we had built felt stronger than the prejudice trying to pull us apart. But back in Chicago, the Real test arrived. My sister Sophia flew up unannounced. She sat in my living room and told me Dad had been diagnosed with early heart issues, stress-related, the doctor said. The family blamed the news about me. Sophia wasn't angry. She was scared. "He loves you, Leo. He just doesn't know how to say it anymore." I spent that night pacing. Kai listened without judgment. In the morning, I booked a ticket to Texas. Kai offered to come with me. I told him I needed to do this part alone first. He understood. At the airport, he hugged me tight and said, "Come back to me, no matter what." The flight felt endless. I was walking into the fire I had feared for years, but for the first time, I wasn't walking alone inside my own head. Texas in January felt both familiar and foreign. My childhood home smelled the same. Mom's cooking, Dad's aftershave. The first dinner was tense. Dad barely spoke. Mom kept refilling plates like food could heal the silence. Sophia sat beside me like a shield. On the second night, I asked Dad to walk with me in the backyard under the stars. He agreed. We stood by the old oak tree where I had learned to ride a bike. I told him everything, not just about Kai, but about the years I spent afraid of disappointing him, the nights I prayed to feel normal. The moment Kai's smile showed me normal was never the goal. Dad listened, hands in his pockets, eyes on the ground. When I finished, he stayed quiet a long time. Finally, he said, "I don't understand it, son. But I understand losing you scares me more than anything else." It wasn't acceptance overnight. It was a beginning. Mom hugged me and whispered she just wanted me happy. Sophia cried happy tears. I flew back to Chicago 2 days later carrying something I hadn't had in years, hope. Kai met me at the airport with flowers and that same smile that started everything. We drove home in silence, hands linked on the gear shift. That night we talked for hours about the future. We decided to move in together in the spring. We planned a small trip to Seattle so I could meet his parents. We even talked about one day adopting a dog and maybe, years from now, telling our own kids how one smile changed 2 lives. Work settled. The whispers faded as the team saw we were simply 2 people who cared about each other. The campaign we started together won an industry award in March. On stage, Kai thanked the team and then looked straight at me in the audience and said, "And to the person who taught me that the best stories are the ones we write together." The room clapped. I smiled back, heart full. 6 months after that first smile, I stood on our new balcony overlooking the city with Kai's arms around me. The internal war was over. I had chosen truth, chosen love, chosen myself. The journey hadn't been easy, but every hard step led here, to a life that finally felt like mine. Kai kissed my temple and whispered, "Still can't believe one smile started all this." I laughed softly. Best decision my heart ever made. Looking back at Leonardo and Kai's journey, the story shows us that the bravest thing any of us can do is stop running from who we truly are. Love doesn't always arrive with fireworks or perfect timing. Sometimes it arrives as a quiet smile that forces us to look inward. The real growth happens not when the world suddenly accepts us, but when we finally accept ourselves, family tensions, societal whispers, and all. There's no perfect roadmap, only the choice to keep walking forward together. If this tale leaves you with anything, let it be the reminder that hiding your heart only dims its light, while letting it shine, even when it trembles, can rewrite everything for the better.